when the official black car pulled up to the modest gates of Wakefield Trinity Rugby Club on that crisp Tuesday morning, nobody could have predicted that what was meant to be a simple royal visit would transform into something far more meaningful. The Princess of Wales stepped out, her heels clicking against the worn concrete, and for the first time in months, she smiled genuinely. Not the practiced royal smile the cameras had grown accustomed to, but something real, something that spoke of home. The crowd of local supporters who had gathered behind the barriers fell silent for a moment, not out of reverence, but out of surprise. Here was their future queen, standing before their beloved rugby club that had been struggling to keep its doors open, looking as nervous as they felt. What none of them knew was that this visit would spark a chain of events that would change not just the club's fortunes, but touch the hearts of an entire community and remind the nation why sometimes the most powerful moments happen in the most unexpected places. The morning mist still clung to the rugby posts when Sarah Mitchell arrived at Wakefield Trinity Rugby Club at 6:30. As the club's volunteer coordinator, she had been awake since 4, her stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and terror. Today was the day the Princess of Wales would visit their small community club, and everything had to be perfect. Sarah had been working at the club for 15 years, ever since her son Tommy had joined the under-10s team. What started as helping with the tea and biscuits had evolved into managing events, coordinating volunteers, and somehow becoming the person everyone turned to when things needed organizing. She never imagined that her biggest challenge would be preparing for royalty. The club itself was hardly what most people would consider impressive. Built in the 1960s, the main building showed its age with faded paint and windows that rattled in strong winds. The changing rooms smelled permanently of liniment and wet kit, and the heating system had a mind of its own. But what the facility lacked in glamour, it made up for in heart. Walking through the empty clubhouse, Sarah could almost hear the echoes of countless celebrations, commiserations, and community gatherings that had taken place within these walls. This was where local children learned not just how to play rugby, but how to be part of something bigger than themselves. It was where teenagers found direction and purpose, where adults maintained friendships that had begun in childhood, and where families came together to support their local team through victories and defeats. The club had been struggling financially for several years. Rising costs, decreasing membership, and competition from larger, better-funded clubs had created a perfect storm of challenges. The committee had been working tirelessly to keep the doors open, organizing fundraising events, applying for grants, and even considering selling some of their land to developers. The news that the Princess of Wales had chosen to visit them as part of her community engagement tour had come as both an honor and an opportunity they could not afford to waste. As Sarah arranged the displays showcasing the club's history and community programs, she thought about all the people this place had touched over the decades. There was old George Harrington, who had played for the first team in the 1970s and now coached the junior sides, passing on not just rugby skills but life lessons to the next generation. There was Maria Santos, whose family had moved to Wakefield from Portugal when she was 12, and who had found acceptance and friendship through the club's women's team. There were dozens of stories of personal transformation, community support, and quiet heroism that happened here every week. The security team arrived first, professional and courteous as they conducted their final checks. Sarah watched them examine every corner of the building she knew so well, seeing it through their eyes as a potential risk rather than a second home. The contrast struck her as both amusing and touching. Here were highly trained protection officers taking the measure of a place where the biggest security concern was usually making sure someone remembered to lock up the equipment shed. By 9 o'clock, the local supporters began to gather. Word had spread through the community in the way that news travels in tight-knit neighborhoods, through conversations at the school gates, mentions in the corner shop, and posts on social media. People came not just because of curiosity about meeting royalty, but because they wanted to show support for their club and their community. Margaret Thompson arrived with her granddaughter Emma, both wearing Wakefield Trinity scarves despite the mild weather. Margaret had been coming to matches here for 40 years, first following her husband, then her sons, and now her grandchildren. Emma, just 7 years old, clutched a small bouquet of flowers she had picked from her grandmother's garden, determined to present them to the princess. Young Kevin Walsh stood with his teammates from the under-16 squad, trying to look casual despite having spent an hour getting ready. Kevin's mother worked 2 jobs to support the family, and the club's subsidized training program was the only way he could afford to play. The coaches had become mentors to him, and the team felt more like family than teammates. Today represented recognition for everything the club meant to young people like him. The media contingent set up their equipment with practiced efficiency, transforming the car park into a temporary broadcast center. Local reporter Jenny Crawford had covered countless events over her 20-year career, But this felt different. She had played netball here in her youth, before the club expanded its programs, and her younger brother had learned rugby on these very fields. This was not just another royal visit to be documented, it was her community being recognised on a national stage. As 10 o'clock approached, the atmosphere grew more electric. The club's president, David Clark, made final adjustments to his tie and rehearsed his welcome remarks one more time. David had volunteered at the club for over 2 decades, serving in various roles from groundskeeper to treasurer. He understood better than anyone how much this visit meant, not just for the publicity and potential funding opportunities, but for the morale of everyone who had invested their time and energy into keeping this community institution alive. The sound of approaching vehicles created a buzz of anticipation. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as she took her position with the other key volunteers and committee members. She looked around at the gathering crowd and realized that this moment represented something larger than a royal visit. It was a celebration of community spirit, of the countless hours of voluntary work that kept grassroots organizations functioning, and of the quiet determination that had sustained this club through decades of challenges and changes. The first security vehicle appeared at the club's entrance, followed by the official car carrying the Princess of Wales. As the small convoy pulled into the car park, Sarah noticed that the princess was looking out of the window at the gathering crowd, and for just a moment, their eyes seemed to meet. In that brief exchange, Sarah sensed something unexpected. The princess looked genuinely interested to be here, not just fulfilling another obligation in a busy schedule of engagements. When the car door opened and the Princess of Wales stepped out, the crowd's applause was warm and welcoming rather than overwhelming. This was not the formal choreographed reception of a state visit, but something more organic and authentic. The princess smiled and waved, then spent a moment taking in her surroundings, looking at the club building, the rugby posts, and the faces of the people who had gathered to meet her. David Clark stepped forward to make the formal introduction, his nervousness evident despite his preparation. The princess put him at ease immediately with a warm handshake and genuine interest in learning about the club's history and current activities. As they walked toward the main building, she stopped frequently to speak with people in the crowd, accepting Emma Thompson's flowers graciously and asking Kevin Walsh about his rugby experiences. What struck Sarah most was how natural the princess seemed in this environment. There was no sense of her slumming it or making a dutiful appearance at a lesser venue. She appeared genuinely engaged and interested, asking detailed questions about the club's programs and listening carefully to the answers. When she learnt about the financial challenges the club faced, her expression showed real concern rather than polite sympathy. The tour of the facilities began with the main clubhouse, where displays highlighted the club's history, its current programs, and its role in the community. The princess spent considerable time examining photographs that traced the evolution of the club from its founding in the 1950s through to the present day. She asked about specific programs, particularly those aimed at supporting young people from disadvantaged backgrounds and encouraging female participation in rugby. In the trophy room, she paused before a display of medals and cups won by various teams over the decades. George Harrington, despite his 78 years, had insisted on being present to share stories of the club's golden era in the 1980s, when the first team had reached the semi-finals of the regional championship. The princess listened with apparent fascination as George described the community's excitement during that remarkable run, how the whole town seemed to rally behind the team, and how victory celebrations had spilled out of the club and into the streets. The visit to the changing rooms provided an opportunity to meet current players from several age groups. The princess seemed particularly interested in talking with the women's team, asking about their experiences in a traditionally male-dominated sport and the support they received from the club and the wider community. Team captain Louise Parker found herself explaining how rugby had given her confidence and leadership skills that had benefited her in her career as a teacher, and how the camaraderie of the team had helped her through difficult personal times. As the formal tour concluded and the group returned to the main hall, Sarah realized that something special had happened. This had not been a perfunctory royal visit with stilted conversation and photo opportunities. The princess had engaged genuinely with the club's story, understood its importance to the community, and connected personally with many of the people she had met. More importantly, she had given everyone present a sense that their work and dedication were valued and recognized at the highest level. The morning's events had transformed what could have been a routine engagement into something memorable and meaningful. As the princess prepared for the next phase of her visit, the atmosphere was one of celebration and optimism. The club's supporters felt proud not just of the recognition they had received, but of how well their community had represented itself. The princess had seen them at their best, and they had risen to the occasion with warmth, dignity, and authentic pride in their achievements. The second phase of the visit began with something the palace planners had not anticipated. Spontaneous applause from a group of junior players who had been watching from the training field. The Princess of Wales heard the sound through the clubhouse windows and asked if she could meet these young athletes. This unscheduled detour would prove to be the most impactful part of the entire visit. Sarah Mitchell quickly arranged for the group to move outside to the main training pitch, where approximately 30 children aged between 8 and 14 were practicing with their coaches. The princess walked onto the field with genuine enthusiasm, immediately asking about the training session and expressing interest in watching the young players demonstrate their skills. 8-year-old Lucy Chen had been playing rugby for just 6 months, encouraged by her parents who wanted her to develop confidence and physical fitness. She was one of only 3 girls in her age group, but had already shown remarkable determination and skill. When the princess approached her group, Lucy was initially shy, hiding behind her coach. However, when the princess asked her directly about her favorite aspect of rugby, Lucy found her voice. The conversation that followed revealed something significant about both the princess and the young player. Lucy explained that rugby had taught her that being small did not mean being weak, and that working together as a team could achieve things that individuals could never manage alone. The princess listened intently, then shared her own thoughts about the importance of sport in building character and confidence. Their exchange was natural and unforced, 2 people of very different ages and backgrounds finding common ground through genuine interest and respect. Coach Martin Phillips had been working with junior players for over 15 years, combining his day job as a primary school teacher with evening and weekend coaching responsibilities. He watched the interaction between the princess and his young charges with growing amazement. Rather than the usual awkwardness that often accompanied adult visits to children's activities, he observed a woman who clearly understood young people and knew how to communicate with them effectively. The princess asked if she could participate in a basic training drill, insisting that she was dressed appropriately enough to join in despite wearing smart casual attire and low-heeled shoes. The children's excitement was infectious as they formed a circle for a simple passing exercise. What followed was 10 minutes of laughter, encouragement, and genuine fun as the future Queen of England learned to catch and pass a rugby ball while being coached by a group of enthusiastic youngsters. 12-year-old Jamal Roberts found himself in the surreal position of correcting the princess's passing technique. Jamal had moved to Wakefield from London 2 years earlier, when his mother found work at the local hospital. The rugby club had been instrumental in helping him settle into his new environment, providing friendship and a sense of belonging during a difficult transition period. His natural leadership qualities had emerged through his involvement with the team, and now he was demonstrating those skills on a national stage. The impromptu training session attracted the attention of parents and supporters who had gathered around the field's perimeter. They watched in delight as their children interacted with royalty in a setting that felt completely natural and appropriate. This was their community space, where their children learned and grew, and seeing it appreciated and celebrated by such a distinguished visitor filled them with pride. Maria Santos, whose daughter played in the under-12s team, found herself in conversation with the princess about the challenges facing working families in supporting their children's sporting activities. Maria worked as a nurse at the local hospital, often struggling to balance shift patterns with her daughter's training schedule and match commitments. The club's flexible approach and supportive community had made it possible for her daughter to participate fully despite these practical difficulties. The princess listened thoughtfully to Maria's experiences, asking detailed questions about how sports clubs could better support families in similar situations. Her interest seemed genuine rather than diplomatic, and Maria found herself sharing more personal details about their circumstances than she had initially intended. The conversation revealed the princess's understanding of the real challenges facing working families, and her appreciation for organizations that found practical solutions to support community participation. As the outdoor session continued, the weather began to change, with threatening clouds gathering overhead. Rather than curtailing activities, the princess suggested moving to the covered training area, where she continued to engage with the young players and their coaches. The informal setting seemed to bring out the best in everyone, creating an atmosphere of celebration and shared enthusiasm. 15-year-old Connor Blake had been selected to demonstrate some of the more advanced skills the older age groups were developing. Connor had struggled academically throughout his school career, but had found confidence and purpose through rugby. The club's coaches had worked with him not just on sporting techniques, but on personal development, helping him to overcome challenges and develop leadership abilities he never knew he possessed. When the princess asked Connor about his rugby goals and future aspirations, his response surprised many of the adults present. He spoke articulately about his desire to give back to the community that had supported him, expressing interest in becoming a coach himself and helping other young people who might be facing similar challenges to those he had overcome. The transformation from the shy, uncertain boy who had first arrived at the club to the confident young man speaking with the Princess of Wales was a testament to the power of community support and positive role models. The conversation turned to the club's outreach programs, particularly their work with local schools, to introduce rugby to children who might not otherwise have the opportunity to participate. Coach Sarah Williams explained how they visited primary schools in areas with high levels of social deprivation, providing free taster sessions and equipment loans to encourage participation. Many of their most committed young players had first encountered rugby through these school visits. The Princess showed particular interest in the club's scholarship program, which provided free membership, equipment, and transport to training and matches for families who could not afford the usual costs associated with youth sport participation. Funded through fundraising activities and local business sponsorship, the program ensured that financial circumstances never prevented a child from joining the club and benefiting from everything it offered. Young Amy Foster, whose family benefited from the scholarship program, found herself explaining to the Princess how the club had become like a second family to her. Amy's father had been unemployed for over a year following an industrial accident, and the family was struggling financially. The club's support had meant that Amy could continue playing the sport she loved, while also providing her with stability and routine during a difficult period in her family's life. The Princess's response to Amy's story was both compassionate and practical. She asked detailed questions about how the scholarship program operated, how recipients were identified and supported, and what impact it had on the young people involved. Her interest extended beyond polite inquiry to genuine engagement with the club's mission and methods. As the session drew toward its conclusion, the Princess gathered all the young players together for an informal group discussion about their experiences and what rugby meant to them. The responses revealed the profound impact that community sport could have on young lives. Children spoke about friendship, confidence, teamwork, resilience, and belonging. They described how the club had helped them through difficult times, celebrated their successes, and provided them with positive role models and mentors. The emotional highlight came when 10-year-old Sophie Martinez, who had been recovering from a serious illness, presented the Princess with a handmade card signed by all the junior players. The card contained messages of thanks for the visit and expressions of what the club meant to each child. Reading through their words, the Princess was visibly moved by the sincerity and thoughtfulness of their contributions. The transition back toward the main clubhouse provided an opportunity for the Princess to speak with some of the volunteer coaches about their experiences and motivations. These were ordinary people who gave extraordinary amounts of their time and energy to support young people in their community. Teachers, nurses, shop workers, retirees, and parents, who somehow found hours each week to organize training sessions, coordinate matches, maintain equipment, and provide the countless small acts of support that made the club function. Their stories revealed the complex web of relationships and commitments that sustained grassroots community organizations. These volunteers were not just coaching rugby, they were mentoring young people, supporting families, building community connections, and contributing to the social fabric that held neighborhoods together. The Princess's recognition of their contributions felt deeply meaningful to people who rarely received acknowledgement for their efforts. As they approached the clubhouse, the Princess paused to take a final look at the training fields where so much of the morning's magic had occurred. The spontaneous nature of the extended session with the junior players had created something special, transforming a formal royal visit into a genuine community celebration that would be remembered long after the official photographs had been filed away and the press coverage had moved on to other stories. The final phase of the visit brought everyone together in the main hall for what was intended to be a brief closing ceremony. However, what unfolded over the next hour would transform not only the immediate fortunes of Wakefield Trinity Rugby Club, but also demonstrate the profound impact that genuine royal engagement could have on grassroots communities across the nation. The Princess began by addressing the assembled crowd, speaking without notes in a manner that felt conversational rather than formal. She thanked everyone for their warm welcome, but quickly moved beyond pleasantries to share her genuine impressions of what she had experienced during her time at the club. Her words carried weight not just because of her position, but because they reflected authentic understanding and appreciation of what she had witnessed. She spoke about being impressed by the club's commitment to inclusivity and community support, particularly the programs designed to ensure that no child was excluded due to financial circumstances. The scholarship program had clearly made a significant impression on her, and she praised the volunteers who had created and sustained it despite the club's own financial challenges. Her recognition of their sacrifices and dedication brought visible emotion to many of the long-serving committee members who had worked tirelessly to keep these programs running. The princess then surprised everyone by announcing that she intended to become patron of a new initiative that would support grassroots rugby clubs facing similar challenges to those experienced by Wakefield Trinity. Working with the Rugby Football League and other partners, this program would provide funding, resources, and expertise to help community clubs develop sustainable business models while maintaining their core mission of serving local young people and families. The announcement created a buzz of excitement throughout the hall, but the princess was not finished. She revealed that Wakefield Trinity Rugby Club would serve as a pilot site for this new initiative, receiving immediate support to address their infrastructure needs and expand their community programs. The club's financial worries, which had been a constant source of stress for the committee and volunteers, would be significantly alleviated through this royal patronage and the practical support it would bring. Sarah Mitchell found herself struggling to process the magnitude of what was being announced. The visit that had begun as an honor and an opportunity had evolved into something transformational. The club that had been fighting for survival just hours earlier was now positioned to become a model for community sport development across the country. The recognition and support would provide security not just for the immediate future, but for generations of young people who would benefit from the club's programs. David Clark, in his response on behalf of the club, spoke emotionally about what this support would mean to everyone associated with Wakefield Trinity. He had prepared remarks about the club's gratitude for the visit, but the magnitude of the princess's announcements required him to speak from the heart about the impact this would have on their community. His words reflected the feelings of everyone present, overwhelming gratitude mixed with excitement about the possibilities that lay ahead. The princess then spent considerable time speaking individually with key volunteers, coaches, and supporters. These conversations were not hurried or superficial, but demonstrated genuine interest in understanding how the new support could be most effectively utilized. She asked detailed questions about the club's priorities, their vision for growth, and the specific challenges they hoped to address with additional resources. Young players who had participated in the morning's training session were invited to share their thoughts about the club and their hopes for its future. Their responses revealed mature understanding of what the announced support would mean, not just for them personally, but for other young people in their community who would benefit from expanded programs and improved facilities. Lucy Chan, the 8-year-old who had initially been shy about meeting the princess, now spoke confidently about her dreams of representing her country at rugby one day. The transformation in her confidence over the course of just a few hours exemplified the positive impact that recognition and encouragement could have on young people's aspirations and self-belief. Jamal Roberts, who had coached the princess during the passing drill, expressed his hope that the improved facilities would enable the club to host larger tournaments and welcome teams from other parts of the country. His vision extended beyond personal benefit to encompass opportunities for cultural exchange and friendship building through sport. Connor Blake spoke about his desire to become involved in the club's coaching programs, inspired by the positive influence that volunteer coaches had had on his own development. The announcement of expanded support had given him confidence that there would be opportunities for him to contribute to the club's mission of supporting other young people facing challenges similar to those he had overcome. The emotional center of these conversations came when Amy Foster, whose family benefited from the scholarship program, thanked the princess not just for the visit and the announced support, but for taking time to understand what the club really meant to local families. Her words carried the weight of authentic experience and genuine gratitude that touched everyone present. As the formal proceedings drew to a close, the princess made one final gesture that would be remembered long after the practical benefits of her support had been implemented. She accepted an invitation to plant a commemorative tree in the club's memorial garden, a space dedicated to former players and supporters who had passed away, but whose contributions to the club's history were permanently honored. The tree planting ceremony brought together representatives from every aspect of the club's community. Senior players who had competed for the first team stood alongside junior players just beginning their rugby journey. Long-serving volunteers worked beside newer supporters who had only recently discovered the club. Families who had been part of the club for generations shared the moment with those who had recently arrived in the area and found welcome and belonging through rugby. George Harrington, the 78-year-old former player and current coach, was given the honour of assisting the princess with the planting. His weathered hands guiding the royal spade into the earth provided a powerful symbol of continuity between the club's past and its bright future. The moment was captured by photographers, but its significance extended far beyond any official record. The princess concluded her visit by signing the club's visitor book, adding her name to a record that stretched back to the club's founding and included local dignitaries, former professional players, and ordinary supporters whose contributions had been recognized over the decades. Her signature represented not just a royal visit, but a commitment to ongoing support and partnership. As the official party prepared to leave, spontaneous applause erupted from the assembled crowd. This was not the polite acknowledgement of duty performed, but genuine appreciation for time generously given, interest authentically demonstrated, and support meaningfully pledged. The princess had arrived as a distinguished visitor, fulfilling a formal engagement. She was leaving as a friend and patron who had connected personally with the club's mission and community. The impact of the visit extended far beyond the immediate benefits of royal patronage and promised funding. Local media coverage highlighted not just the presence of the Princess of Wales, but the story of community resilience and volunteer dedication that had impressed her so deeply. National coverage followed, bringing attention to the challenges facing grassroots sport and the solutions being developed by communities like Wakefield. In the days and weeks following the visit, the club experienced an unprecedented surge in interest. New families inquired about membership for their children. Local businesses offered sponsorship and support. Former players who had moved away made contact to express their pride in their old club's recognition. The visit had catalyzed a wave of community engagement that reinforced the club's position at the heart of local life. The transformation went beyond increased membership and improved finances. The recognition received during the royal visit had boosted confidence throughout the organization. Volunteers who had sometimes doubted whether their efforts were worthwhile now understood the genuine value of their contributions. Young players who had taken their opportunities for granted now appreciated the special nature of what their club provided. Most significantly, the visit had demonstrated the power of authentic engagement between public figures and grassroots communities. The princess had not simply performed her duties. She had connected genuinely with people and causes that mattered. Her support would continue long after the cameras had departed and the newspaper headlines had been replaced by other stories. The commemorative tree planted in the memorial garden would grow alongside the club itself, serving as a permanent reminder of a day when national recognition had validated local pride and royal support had transformed community dreams into achievable realities. The legacy of the Princess of Wales's visit to Wakefield Trinity Rugby Club would be measured not in official photographs or press coverage, but in the lives of young people who would benefit from strengthened programs and the inspiration provided by an extraordinary day when their small club became the center of national attention for all the right reasons.